There's a phrase called the turn of cloth. And what that means and what that applies to with us in our jackets is when we have two layers of fabric together. So we have an upper collar, we have our under collar together. And when we roll those down, so there's my collar standing up. When those are rolled down into the position they will finally be when they're stitched, it's called turn of cloth because it's this upper fabric that rolls over another layer of fabric. And what we want to see, I'm going to turn mine around, is it's not stitched, but what we want to see is that the upper layer is still longer and covers the under layer. Now, in my case, my fabric is very thin, and I've placed this on a mannequin so that I can see. I mean, I can see a little bit right here, but I think that it's not much. There's a tiny bit in the front. If there was a lot of fabric, a lot of my under collar, under here, showing, so let's say that I had a lot of my under collars showing like that, I would definitely want to mark that under collar. I'm not going to cut it off. I would take pins and I would pin where the cut edge of my fabric met up with my under collar. The cut edge of my upper collar met with my under collar. And I would mark that, then I would take it off and I would hand thread mark that so that I would know that that's actually where the raw edge of the upper collar needs to meet. Now, in my case, I don't think I'm going to need to do that. I think it's rolling enough that it's going to be fine. Again, I've got pretty thin layers. This usually is something that happens when your fabric is thicker. So it is something to look for. If you don't have a mannequin, you can do this on a shaped suit hanger. And let me show you how I got there and what I did to prep my collar to make sure that everything was laying together. In preparation for figuring out if I needed to adjust my under collar, which you see right here, before sewing, here's what I did. I put my lining into my jacket and I pinned it. I pinned the seams together along the neckline. And also here you can see where it turns the corner. I've pinned there. Also, I pinned it all the way through. So here's the back side. So you can see where I've pinned my neck seam together. I also, because we have a collar band or a collar stand in our collar, I also pinned those seam lines together. So here's the seam line on the upper collar pinned to the seam line on the under collar. I've put my jacket back on my mannequin and I have, you can see where my collar seam is pinned together and the top of my collar band is pinned together. And what I'm going to do now is turn my collar down as it would be when it's completely sewn. And you can see, you can't see the under collar. That's good. That means that my turn of cloth, that my patterns actually are lined up well enough and my fabric isn't overly thick. So I'm not going to worry about this tiny little bit down here, but it's looking good. So now I can go ahead and get ready to actually unpin all of this and start pinning my collar, my jacket, and my jacket lining together. And I will show you that next.